Enthusiasm with multi-tonal voice.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I had eggs and ham for breakfast. It was delightful. A little bit on the salty side. And I had some mackerel with it as well. And that was good.
Well, thank you for introducing the podcast. Hello.
Hello, are we rolling?
We are rolling.
Sneaky old roll.
The old
Sneaky roll.
Greg Hards. Hello.
Hello.
Joining us here from the USA.
Yeah.
So, how does it feel waking up every morning knowing that I am your brother? It must be a good feeling.
Yeah, no, it is a good feeling, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss me
Oh,
when I'm away?
yeah, massively.
What do you think the biggest what do you think the biggest influence has been from me personality wise on you? Or like top 3 ways I've influenced you?
Choose wisely here.
Good Lord. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult because I haven't really had like a partner study to compare.
Or another, what? As in another brother,
another and be
compare.
like, oh, that's what Greg gave me that one didn't. So it's a difficult.
Yeah, but I can say that about Viv. I can hear. There's things I pick up from him.
Yeah,
That
maybe
I
I should.
recognise.
Maybe I'll answer that in a bit because my brain doesn't work very quickly with those sort of questions. Maybe I'll
Like
come back to me at the end of the.
like the
Perhaps we
New Year's resolution.
Yeah, the New Year's
Like,
resolution I
he
came up
answered
with today.
Well, let's start with Greg. So what do you do? Explain.
Yes, I'm a filmmaker, film director, and I direct documentaries and commercials. And yeah,
The big boy levels.
big boy levels. I wouldn't say quite yet. I'm always striving to do better work. But I have just finished my first feature, so I feel like that was like a nice kind of little ceiling that I broke. And speaking of New Year's resolutions, that was very much a goal, was to kind of make a feature film before I was 30, and didn't make that. I'm 31, so. But,
That's such a huge achievement to produce a feature.
yeah, and it seems really insurmountable until you wake up one day and then you've done it. And it was the biggest lesson for me was psychologically, like the benefit of long-termism, and just kind of being like, okay, well actually if you chip away at something, then you have this hole, you come out the other end with this hole. And I don't think I really truly believed that before, and that's the case with anything, not just in terms of filmmaking, but in terms of anything. I feel like I'm quite an impatient person, and it's like taught me the value of just chipping away and patience, because there's no way. I mean, we made this over 2.5 years, and it's just like there were points where we were just like, what are we doing?
That's something that I doing also, not at the level you are by far, but working video production. What I loved about it was the short form production cycle. Like really, if you work, most of the videos I produce in and out within a week, but working on something for 2.5 years is beast.
Yeah, but I think that there's a lot to be said for the short-term stuff as well, and I actually love doing both alongside each other. So within that time, we were doing commercial work, and those turnarounds. We usually like when you're a director, like you start the project from start to finish, so you it's your kind of baby throughout, and so projects will on average last about a month, something like that. But then all the time ticking away in the background, this guy's life is kind of unfolding, and you're kind of checking in with him all the time, and you're going up to shoot him for like a week at a time, and it's almost like you then land in his world, and you're back there, and it's like a familiar place, and it reminds you of what you're working on in terms of long term. But I think if I was just doing that, I don't know. I can't decide really what the best route is. I think there's a lot to be said for like focusing on one thing. Christopher Nolan does that. He's like, okay, when I'm in a project, I'm in it. I'm like completely focused and on one thing. Whereas Spielberg's kind of, he's like doing the previs for Ready Player One while he's directing. I don't know, what was it? Can't remember. This is something with Tom Hanks in probably. Oh, the
Band of Brothers?
Post. No, he was doing the Post, and then yeah, that's it. And he was doing previs in his spare time, which is obviously on shoot days not any spare time. He's doing that, so he's like kind of juggling all these balls. Whereas Nolan just completely immerses himself in like one project. He's like, this is what I'm doing for the next 2 years or 3 years, and he just does it. I feel like there's something that's really cool about that.
Do you think that you could operate in that sort of environment?
I think
if financial, like, you know, if budget wasn't an issue and they're like, right, we're gonna just get you in for 2 years and that's your sole project.
I mean, that really excites me. Yeah, but it's the same thing of like, I'm still an impatient person, and my focus is not as good as it should be. So I really enjoy flitting between things. But that's not. The longer it goes on, the more I realise that's not good. It's not actually, doesn't develop. It doesn't create good work.
Yeah, it's like when you're looking at a project for so long and you just you lose that like outsider's perspective. And I feel like when I'm like working on a project and I've just spent 2 days on it, and I'm so eager to just send it out and be like, that's good, that's great, out. And it's like, actually, hold back, let's give it a couple of days, get a fresh set of eyes, and then have a look back and then reflect. But like, actually, could I have moved that about a bit?
Like Damien Chazelle wrote La La Land over 6 years. 6 years. And he had like so many rewrites. And like every one of those rewrites is solving a problem that you had with the film before. And then it's just like closing one of those loops. And you can only do that with time. And it's
maybe you could describe the Fighting for a City journey quickly.
Yes.
From sort of how did it come about? A bit of a summary of the.
So we were, commercial directors, but more within the documentary realm. So we've done a lot of documentary shorts, and that's what we kind of specialised in. Then we worked with a guy, Richard Moore, on like a Heineken job in Nevada, and we shot with him over a couple of days, and it was like a super intense job with like dune buggies and crazy amount of hours. And then he kind of come back and he just finished this documentary called Being AP, about AP McCoy, and he recommended us to the executive producer on Being AP because they were looking to do another sports documentary. And went out for a pint with him, and he said, I went out for dinner with Barry Hearn, who's the boxing promoter. His son Eddie Hearn is the main boxing promoter in the country, and so his dad he made snooker popular.
Base.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that makes snooker popular and a commercially viable sport should have some respect. And he was like, this producer wanted to make a film about the Eubanks, because Eubank obviously is Chris Eubank is a son that boxes, and it's a pretty cool story because Chris Eubank is weird, and he was like, do not go near that guy, like he's insane.
Oh really? Just psycho?
He's very controlling and just very difficult to work with, very erratic. He's a strange man, and he'll want full control over the final cut, and you just can't have that as a director. You just can't give away final cut. Anyway, so he was like, you want a real story? Josh Warrington is the biggest story in boxing right now, and you look up Josh Warrington on YouTube, and there is just there are these crazy phone videos from fans in the Leeds Arena going nuts during his ring entrance. and it's Kaiser Chiefs. I predict a riot, and they're all the Leeds United football fans. They all get hammered during the Leeds United game during the day, and then they come and watch the boxing, and just throw pint glasses at boxers and
just like pure hooliganism.
Pint glasses full of piss as well. And there's like a notorious block called Block 105, and they all of the die-hard Leeds firm, they all stay in one Block 105, which is central, upper tier, central to the ring, and they all take the tops off, go absolutely nuts. And it's just like no one in British boxing has the kind of support that Josh Warrington has, and he's a featherweight. And he has no titles. He's British champion, but he has no titles. Doesn't have a hard punch, so doesn't really knock people out. And he's quite an unorthodox fighter in general. No one in the boxing world rates him, but everyone in Leeds loves him. He's like the city's hero. So he was like, "Do you want to do a film about him?" And we were like, "Yeah, we do."
That's awesome.
And it was crazy because we thought he was gonna. He's had this long, ongoing rivalry with Lee Selby, who's the IBF world champion, Welsh guy. They've been mouthing off at each other for years. It's a rivalry that's kind of built up, and it was built up by Eddie Hearn, his promoter at the time, for over a number of years, and to the point where the Leeds fans were just baying for blood. They wanted this Lee Selby fight, and Josh wants to make it happen. Josh is he's what they call a ticket seller, and so he's kind of shot up in the ranks because he was actually generating money. Most boxers don't bring anyone. They don't get 10 supporters go see him. But Josh is like this man of the people, lovely guy, charming guy, like played football with all these Leeds. He's more actually like Ricky Hatton of Manchester. Mate, he was like Ricky Hatton. Yeah, he was.
I don't really know.
Well, he was the last person, Ricky Hatton. He fought Mayweather and he actually got beat up by Mayweather pretty hard.
Yeah, he was a good fighter to watch, but like very aggressively get in your face sort of fighter.
Oh really?
Like, it meant he got
hyped up.
He got hit a lot, but he could just wade through the punches and just
Absolutely,
real like pitbull.
Exactly. That was the last time we've had like a British boxer that's had that sort of level of support, and the reason he has that support is because he still goes around and sells tickets to his fans. Like they all love him. He goes to every single Leeds United game. Like he's just a genuine bloke, and I feel like in a world in which we don't really sports fans don't really connect, or football fans don't really connect with the footballers anymore because they just get paid so much money they can't relate to their lifestyles. Whereas this guy is just like a normal lad, and people in Leeds appreciate that. Yorkshire people appreciate that in general, and I hate to generalise, but I mean, I can because I was there for 2 years. They're just really just honest people. That's what they value most, just authenticity, and not, I don't know, like not getting above your station kind of thing, and just like not forgetting your roots and being too big for your boots. They don't have any of that. Yeah.
And how was the production side of it? I mean, from that beginning journey to where you're now, it's all finished. How did that start? In pre-production.
Well, oh man, I mean, when you're starting a project like this, you're trying to. The producers have to try and budget the film. But the problem with a documentary like this is it's an observational documentary, and it's based on, we've got our endpoint, which is quite a hard thing to do in itself, is like establish our endpoint. The end goal was the world title shot against Lee Selby. We thought that was going to be about a year. So we set up our production for that timeline. So you say, right, we'll have a shooting block here, we'll have like 5 days, week, whatever. But you only have a certain amount of shoot days because you only have a certain amount of budget, right? The trouble is that this like dragged on over 2 years. And so like that's really hard to...
Did you have to dilute your production days, or did you manage to get some funding to push that extra?
It was a bit of both. Like we were just super passionate about the project, and therefore whenever something happened, for instance when he's getting married, we're like, right, we'll get the train up, go shoot him, get married. It's like we have to do that. It's like it's not in the budget, but we'll just do that.
Adds to the story.
And yeah, and so the I don't know, like I would love to spend the amount of days that it takes to shoot a documentary like this is crazy. And because it's just observational, it's not you're not going to get
it's not a shot list.
No, and you're not also
getting
getting
those moments in which they relax, don't you, to make it work.
And this is the thing that kind of sets the documentary apart in general, is that it's actually, when you look at it, observational documentaries are quite few and far between, purely for the reason that they're really hard to do, and because they're really hard to predict. So we could have actually got to a point where his career just fizzled out, and we would have wasted 2 years of our lives. And anyone can make a documentary out of a retrospective story, and you can do that to varying degrees of quality. But you sit people down. Oh, what happened? You do a bunch of interviews. You cobble a load of archive footage together. Maybe even shoot like original footage. But to actually have a story in the present, that you're taking the audience from this point in time to this point in time, is rare. Actually, when you actually have a look at, go on Netflix and be like, okay, how many of these are actually observational documentaries? And the good thing about that is that it means that if you do it right, the audience is going on the journey in real time with your characters. And that was super important to us.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to keep that engagement, with that sort of work, to get someone to dedicate that time.
It's yeah, go on.
Well, I was going to say, you were saying earlier, it's a long-term project that's very uncertain. Would you have any tips for someone else embarking on that length of project, in terms of how did you best manage your psychology and sort of stay positive and fight off those doubts that creep in?
Yeah, I feel like basically I agree with what Kirk says.
Well, do you know what? I think the main thing is not letting yourself, not kidding yourself that a moment that you might be able to get is not worth getting. It's a load of hassle going out and shooting. And sometimes you're like, okay, will this be important to our story? And it's almost like, sometimes it was like, will this be important to our story? But also, and what you mean by that is this worth going through the rigmarole of getting all your camera together? And we shot, it's not a small camera, we shot on an Alexa, so it's like, it's a big deal. It's all this gear, it's a small production team, but it's significant. Deciding whether are we not going out and shooting this because it's too much hassle because it's only for a day, or are we going out and are we not shooting this because it doesn't match, it doesn't fit in with the story? So the most important, it's all a decision making process. Is this is this press conference important to our story? Will it actually go in our film? And if it might, then go shoot it. If there's a 5% chance that it will be in the film, go shoot it. Get that coverage and go shoot it. But often there's stuff that actually a press conference is a good example. We can't have a film full of press conferences, and we didn't really want that. We wanted behind the scenes. We wanted the stuff that the cameras didn't actually see. So even though a press conference seems like a significant event, the footage that you actually get there will be you're not actually going to use it at all. Whereas stuff like going to register their kids at the registry office, that's the stuff that you have to make sure you get. But you also have to have faith. You have to have faith that it's fine. You may not use any of this. You may not use any of this footage, but you just got to get it, and there's no shortcut to this stuff. The amount of like the quality of our footage from the first year to the second year was huge. Like the jump in quality was huge, because we were in a commercial mindset of like, get this 30 seconds, get this 30 seconds, and just kind of get various like tight shots with shallow depth of field.
You were thinking aesthetically rather than
100%.
Eased into the storytelling.
Yeah. Whereas something that I learned, and this is something I really, it kind of you learn as you go along, as you start to watch the footage, is that, like, I remember, because I worked for a photographer, and he's a photojournalist, and and that was like my kind of first job as an assistant, and he'd always kind of critique my photography, and he'd be like, why aren't you using a wide lens? Like, you need to be able to tell. You need to be able to tell a story within that one image, and so your eye needs to be able to go between one subject to the next, look at where they are, and where's the location, what's the lighting, what's the time of day. There's a million questions that you can answer through looking at this one image. But I'm sorry, what I mean by wide in kind of layman's terms is like being able to see the image. Mm-hmm. Instead of zooming in tight,
a wide frame
to a person, yeah. So, what I would find is that we'd look at that footage, and then we'd start cutting stuff together, and we'd be zoomed in on people's faces. Now that's cool if you want to concentrate on an emotional moment, but you're not actually telling the audience anything other than what this first person's face looks like. Whereas if you actually step back and just let the scene play out in front of you, then your audience is just like gathering, and it's even subconscious. Like, they're gathering all this information. What does this guy's flat look like? Like Sean, Josh's dad, he's got like a really small, like 2 up, 2 down kind of house, and like he's got like kids like wrestling toys all over the place, and it's kind of hodgepodge of things, but like, it's a really it's a really nice little home.
1,000 words.
Yeah, and like by sitting there and just showing the audience that image, then you're telling them so much more, and you're giving them so much more subtext to your characters, and it means that you don't have to spell it out to them. And really, essentially, what that is it was an exercise in removing the filmmaker's ego from the situation.
Yeah.
Like, at first I'm like concentrating on does this shot look beautiful, and whereas really what I should have been thinking about is what are we telling the audience here? Like, what's the story we're telling? What are we doing here? And give them as much information as possible. So it's almost like you're kind of taking, that's how I felt a little bit, like, is that you're taking your ego out of it, and I think that comes from confidence. It's just like, look, we know how to shoot, it will look great, you don't have to try too hard. You just let the camera, let the subjects in front of you do the work, and just sit back.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. I get caught up in the moment where when I start evaluating the shots I've taken, I find it difficult that you might start perceiving like the same shots. Like, if you're filming everything at 20mm, 24, everything's wide. And how do you mix up that framing? And when do you choose to, I want to get mid shots, I want to get close up?
Right. So yeah, this is another important thing. So we ended up just shooting most of the film once we'd kind of got past that, almost got, and when I say we, me and Jacob Jacob Proud, who's my director partner, and we shot the film as well. So we're both directors of photography, and both directors, and we switched, and we kind of had this discussion of like, we need to go wider. We need to do for the reason stated. And then for the rest of the film, we shot most of the film on a 32mm lens. Again, to the layman, is like, it just is it's a lens that gives you that kind of wide frame shot, that gives you a lot of information in the shot. And actually, if you look online, look up what films were shot with one lens.
I actually just saw this yesterday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's been going around recently.
Yeah, it's like a little.
There is
It's a little thing.
There's an insane list of some of the greatest movies of all time that were shot on one lens.
Because I guess yeah, with that approach, I guess you could get too bogged down with getting too technical. We need this lens,
Yes.
we need that lens, rather
Yeah.
than just going, this is the lens, I'm going to focus on what's happening in front of the lens.
Especially
Exactly.
with documentary.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that.
And the point is as well is that if you want to get tighter, to your point about how do I get that variety? If you want to get tighter, come in tighter. Use your you use that kind of almost intuition to come in tighter and then move back.
Yeah.
So
Use your feet.
use your feet. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
think we've
that's the
definitely
thing.
getting lost in that with such a variety of like zoom lenses.
Mm.
It was like a little exercise that we used to do at like uni. Not even as a thing, but like I had friends of mine, and we could only afford like a prime lens, so
Yeah.
that's what you did.
Right.
And
It's a
I-
it's a great exercise. Yeah.
yeah,
And did you find that was like? Did you find it was restrictive, or
it forces
did
you to be more creative, 100%, and to get, if you want to get closer and move forward, you do get a bit spoilt by having like a nice zoom lens, especially if you're a little bit lazy.
But the thing is with the zoom lens as well is like we don't generally use zoom lenses, for a number of reasons. For this, we didn't use zoom lenses generally because it's weird. I don't know how much like jargon to talk in terms of
ahead.
filmmaking
Go ahead.
jargon.
Just go ahead.
Yeah,
Just go ahead.
because anyway, whatever.
Yeah, talk the jargon.
We didn't use zoom lenses because the zoom lens that we would want to use that gives us a good image is like an ingenue, and it's like it's really heavy. So
Which ingenue did you use? The
it's
EZs.
Okay, maybe hang on, maybe translate the jargon to me.
That'll work.
Okay, so what was the word you just said?
Ingenue is a.
Well,
it's a-
actually, do you know what? No, let's take a step back because that's actually not important.
Okay.
The point is that with a zoom lens, meaning that you can go between different focal lengths within the one lens, so you can zoom in and out within that one lens. Whereas with prime lenses, they're a fixed focal length. So if you want to shoot like tighter in, you either have to walk in,
Yeah.
or you put a longer lens on, like a 75mm or something like that. And
Can I just
Yeah,
jump
go on.
in? Do you think that affects the subject at all? The fact that you've got one lens on, so if you're shooting close, you're close.
Yes.
Do you think that affects your? Do you think that's good for the subject, knowing what sort of shot you're doing at all times, rather than, or do you think that might be a bit distracting sometimes when you get in and out?
100% depends on it depends on the subject.
Yeah.
But this is another thing as well. Is like by coming in. There's two things. There's two things where. Two ways in which it benefits you using just one lens or using a prime lens, and so if you want to switch, it's deliberate. It's a deliberate thing, and it's kind of annoying to change. It makes every choice that you make deliberate. So if you have to think about like, okay, what am I saying in this shot, and like, God, I mean, I hear this all the time, but it is true, and it is kind of. It's so key to any sort of meaningful filmmaking or storytelling, is that and I say it as someone that's just done a million irrelevant shots in my life, is that you have to be saying something, making a statement with whatever shot you're getting. You should never get a shot for the sake of getting a shot because it looks pretty, or just because you feel like you have to. What are you saying to the audience right now? And so by moving in deliberately, you are thinking to yourself, okay, I need a tight shot of this because this is what I want to convey to the audience, or I need a wider and because this is what I want to convey. Every decision you make is whereas if you have a zoom lens, like where you're kind of going like that, what you tend to do is you'll zoom in on a tight shot and you'll see the image and you'll be like, oh, that looks beautiful. You know, like I'll get this shot of you right now and you've got this lovely kind of like, you know, you've got this key light on this side, so you've got like a very contrasty face, you've got shadow on this side. Right now your face looks absolutely gorgeous, you know. But that is like on a tight,
I would.
That would look yeah, I know, I definitely would. But the on a tight that would look really good. So if I've got a camera right now and I'm zooming in and I see that shot, I'm like, ooh. And especially when you come in tighter, you get a more shallow depth of field, as well. You get a shallow depth of field, which
bogged down in the immediate aesthetics.
It looks it looks cinematic.
So
you know, it looks cool. But like, I will more likely settle on that zoomed in shot, and that the aesthetic will take over the story and what kind of statement that you're making.
Yeah,
that's really. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was saying I'm in a very early stages of filming a documentary myself. Or me and a friend of mine, we're doing about like a British American football team, and it's just been a huge learning experience. I'm so interested in how your process is, especially with this long form filming.
Yeah.
And I think that I would want to. Experiment is not the right word, but I would like to focus on more fixed focal length.
Yes.
For that same reason.
Yes.
I like what you said. It's something I've been very interested in recently, is the just increasing intentionality in all of your actions, really. And I like that it's you've increased the sort of barrier to entry, so that if you decide to do that, you have to think about, I'm doing that for a reason.
Yeah.
It was like I've been sort of interested in the ideas of sort of minimalism at the moment, which isn't really. It's more about intentional living than deprivation and living in a bare room. But it's just going through all your stuff and clutter, and just learning how to get rid of things, so that the things you do have are important to you, and you don't have all this. Because it creates like emotional baggage, just having crap clutter everywhere. Also digitally as well. I just tidied up the apps on my phone into folders, and all of a sudden it was like a weight had been lifted. I was like, It was weird. I didn't realise there was like an emotional baggage on having my phone cluttered. But I think you can sort of apply that to everything.
Stress.
Yeah.
How was the post-production like? Because I feel like when you've got, I remember I've seen how many drives you have. And it's scary.
Yeah.
How many terabytes do you have in?
That's a nice little secure cage now. I don't know if you saw that.
I haven't seen that. I saw him piled up.
Yeah, Jacob was very happy about that.
Edan helped with a bit of.
Yes.
That was a separate project that I was just assisting on on a little shoot.
Yes.
But I had the opportunity to kind of see.
It was a shoot that we'd done in America and shipped over to the UK, and it was a hell of a lot of videos, like crazy amount. I mean, the amount they wanted actually for.
Yeah, they rinsed you. They definitely got their money's worth.
Yeah, they definitely got their money's worth. Yeah, but yeah, no. So and Jacob's like super paranoid about security, so the first thing he ordered for that office was, for the hard drives, just this huge cage with a padlock on.
Brilliant. That's the most scary thing, and I'm especially when you're filming with big, larger files. I'm majority of my filming is now with raw format, so I'm kind of getting used to using a lot of drive space.
Yeah, and you do. It's just a fact of life. You got to factor that into a job as well. But but in terms of editing. Actually, the same principle applies of this intentionality of like, what is each shot saying? And it's very easy to have too much clutter in your edit and have too many shots because you shot a certain amount of angles. And so you want to give your film variety. You want to make it visually interesting. You want it to be snappy. You want the pacing to be snappy. But actually, the key to editing is cutting and being brutal with what your shots are, because you have to be like, what is this shot saying? What is this? How is this one shot moving the story on? It has to be a constant forward momentum.
Yes.
And if it doesn't say that, there are so many shots from that film that we just thought were beautiful. would just cut, because
Yeah.
it's just like, and we spent ages on as well. And then you get to it and you're like, why? You know, we don't need a 10-minute training scene of him, like a Rocky style training
Some
montage. Like, we got awesome footage of him training, but anyone could get awesome footage of a guy boxer training. What is it actually telling us? How is it moving the story on? And like, that is again I would say the number one kind of thing I would say in terms of when you get to the cutting of it is being just asking yourself so strictly is how is this moving the story on, and if it doesn't move the story on, get rid of it.
I think my moment of that was, honestly I think someone has to tell you that cut all that down. And you know, I remember doing a video, like I first bought my little Sony camera and I just wanted to take it everywhere, and I thought stereotypically people just go to Brighton and do the Brighton film. I was like, that's what I want to do. I found a lovely day, took the gimbal out, brought a friend of mine, and we did loads of filming around Brighton. I put together like a 4 or 5 minute video, and my brother came in the room and I said, what do you think of this? Because I'm like super hyped. I'm like, each shot looks like, I'm just like, the lighting's great. Yep. That looks really good. And he's like, you can cut all of that in half. You've got like repeating shots. You don't need that. What's that about? And I was like, oh man. And I remember just taking that 5 minute video to a 1.5 minute video.
But that,
and it's so powerful.
But that happens over, you have, obviously, yeah, it's important to like work in a team and be able for people that you trust that can be honest with you and be like, okay, you need to cut that, doesn't mean anything, you need to cut that. But you also get better at like doing that yourself over time and just being more brutal. Because I found that I was just, it was still a novelty that I was making. I was like shooting things that looked beautiful. Like that, it took me ages to get over myself and get over the novelty that like I could shoot things that looked good. And I was like, yeah, but I can't lose this. We can't lose this. I can't lose this. It looks so good. And then once you just get used to it. I guess you get bored of your own work, really. So you're like, you're not as precious. You're just like, yeah, cut that, fuck it.
And what about, because I remember speaking to a filmmaker a few years ago. I was talking about the process of editing and kind of the enthusiasm after you've shot it to edit. After filming, how long did it take until you actually started the editing process? Or even if you've shot a particular day, let's say you've shot one day, you send that off to your DIT for a day, whatever. Did you start making cuts when you finished each shot day, or did you wait until you've compiled everything?
When you're the nature of the production was that it was funded privately in bit parts, so you don't get the full amount of the production costs up front, which meant that throughout the whole film we were cutting sizzle reels of what the footage that we had so far to then entice like new investors to invest in the film. So there's quite a cool exercise in that, because it reminds you what you have instead of just waiting right until the end. It reminds you what you have as you go, and what you need to get. So yeah, no, I mean, but then at the end of that you have a 16-week editing period where our kind of senior editor Kevin came in and was just like in the office for 16 weeks solid, and then him and Will kind of basically like would literally cut little scenes and then like kind of swap them between each other and kind of piece them together like a puzzle. So what was your question?
About I was talking about the editing process and how soon after filming did you get onto the editing desk?
Yeah. So I mean, this was like it got picked up at Universal before we cut the film, and so but they wanted it in a crazy short period of time. So Kevin came in for the week before we stopped shooting. So the week before the world title fight, he was already in the office. Like we had hundreds of hours worth of footage, so like that took a really long time to wrangle. It was insane amount of footage.
Yeah. Could you imagine yourself being on the editing desk? Because I've definitely, after a couple of years filming now, I'm like, I know what I like.
The good thing is that as you find people that you trust. You trust them to, bring their own creative,
their own flavour in.
Their own flavour. Yeah. So I used to do a lot of editing, and we have been working with Will for quite a number of years now, and I trust him creatively to bring something that I wouldn't have thought of. And also, that's really the main thing. It's like you have these collaborative partners who you give your baby to, and understand that this is as much their project as it is yours, and anything that they bring can only better the film. So you're kind of like you give that trust to someone, knowing that they're going to bring something else to it, and they think of stuff that you would never have thought of. And also the other thing is if they weren't there shooting it and they weren't that close to it, they have an objectivity that you can't have when you're shooting.
I mean, even working on that project of yours, I'd present Will with a cut that I'm like, that works, it flows. Yeah. And then he's like, oh, let me have a quick mess around. And he spent 2-3 minutes going over it, and I'm like, oh shit, that looks so much better.
Did you find that? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong.
And what specifically was what did you notice what he did? Like something that he particularly did, or was it just the speed in which he did it, or what?
It was the quality of learning where the cut should sit. Not only that, but how much pre-roll you need, or how much post. How much time do I need to give that? And also, what would the audience think? Because sometimes I lose it in the moment and think like, that looks good, but actually, what are the people that are watching it gonna think? And I was just so impressed to see, because I think, we might want to give it another 20 frames. I want 20 frames of that, and then people are like, actually, let's bring that a little bit more. Let's cut that a little bit back. And it's hard to describe it, the edit, but you get a vibe. You get that feeling like that feels right. It sits better.
Yeah.
Especially when you've putting in sound design in.
Yeah.
And that's something that I don't utilize as much, to be honest with you. But when you do, for instance, with Will's putting in this little things, I'm like, oh, that brings that up, and that's
huge. It's a huge thing. And the sound design is like something that people really just don't appreciate enough how important sound design is, and how much it leads the film. It's as much as important as the visuals. And I always thought of it as an afterthought, and then since we started really giving it respect, it's like our work has improved so much.
Oh yeah.
So much more. And that's what Will does, is that with commercials, you have to be able to sell in like the first cut to the client. And like if you don't, you have to use every tool in the box to be able to like sell it to them. And he places this kind of temp sound design over the top, and it just helps sell it so much. It will just brings the whole thing to life. Yeah, completely. But,
I was really blown away, and it had been a while since I worked with another editor that really knew their shit.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed, and every moment I can to try to take little bits, and I question like, why did you do that? Why did you see that? Yeah. And the great thing was Will is that he had fantastic patience, to sit there and be like, oh, that's kind of what why I did that. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Will's I don't think he's human, actually. Like the levels to which he doesn't get angry in any situation.
He's got so much patience.
And I've seen him in, like, he's worked with him so long now, and we've worked in such high stress situations on like ridiculous deadlines with like no sleep, and the guy doesn't get angry. Like, it's insane to me.
He'd make a good astronaut, by the sounds of it.
Slight career change, but
calm under pressure.
Yeah.
Cool head.
Also,
just crank out the work.
I don't know if he would actually make the astronaut.
I think what's important.
I think he'd explode.
Do you feel I should not start him
I
up?
think he'd be the first to admit that he would be a shit astronaut. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't.
Well,
maybe
we can't all be a good astronaut.
I don't know what makes a good astronaut. I don't know. I mean, what is an astronaut these days? Who the fuck knows? Like, who is being an astronaut these days?
I watched a program. There was a TV program though, of someone who was an astronaut guiding people through. It was a TV program guiding them through all the training they'd have to do. But the person who won the program got through to the actual selection process.
All right.
Oh shit! So they didn't even get to be an astronaut.
They got a place to get in to
And
the selection process.
what was the main bit of training that you were like, okay, that's really intense, I wouldn't be able to do that?
I thought that G-force thing. But before we get
I
too
think it was
carried
being
away,
clever.
I do want to kind of reel it back slightly and just say
Reel it back.
I think it is really
Right.
important to have patience, especially with editing and when you're dealing with clients.
Yes.
You know, there's been moments where I'm working with some quite difficult clients and they expect a lot from you, and you're underpaid, and you're like, you know what, I'm really not enjoying this project. I want to get it done with, and you're trying to hold back. And that's something I've definitely learned, is when it is in controlling the conversation and trying to make sure like you're there to produce something and do your best at it and make sure that both parties are good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and just overseeing Will's conversation with you know, corresponding between yourself and working with other people, you know, and you get that chat log and like, right, we need this change and blah blah blah, just like straight on it.
Yeah, I just like wake up in LA and just kind of start hammering him with information straight away. It's quite funny. They get this like I get up early and I call the office at like 7:30 a.m. in LA, and it's so funny because it's just like sometimes they're just like, oh, he's awake. Do we have to talk to him right now, or do we? And they're like, sometimes they're like, sorry dude, we're really busy right now, can't talk, we'll chat, we'll call you in a second. And then sometimes they're just like, they've clearly done no work all morning, they just like want some banter. And then they start just like destroying me. I'm like sitting there drinking my coffee,
Bleary-eyed.
getting all this
How is
getting
it
all the shit from
managing work, you know, being based in LA and having a team in London? Do you find the workflow is quite good? Do you have another team in LA? How does
It's
that work?
like you have to get up early because otherwise you're just not going to overlap. Because I was in New York for 4 years, and that was like pretty decent time difference, like 5-hour time difference, whereas LA is a bit too much. So it's like, but you get double the work done. So we've really got it down in terms of like workflow. Like they would have been working on a treatment for a new project, for instance, during the day, and then Jacob will have a conversation at the end of his day as he's walking home and be like, right, this is what I wrote on the treatment, like here's how I've laid it out, over to you, and he'll kind of tag me in.
I suppose that's a good way of doing it, because if you're both working on the same one, you'd just be working through it together, wouldn't you? And you wouldn't necessarily actually do it any quicker, would you?
I think you do. I think it's good being in the same room. But the way we've just learnt how to I don't know, it's been quite a good independent thing, because we worked how to learn how to work by ourselves, but with that sort of collaborative element. But we work together so long now that we know what each other likes, and we know what we like, and we share a lot of the same tastes. And so we just, I don't know, so it's kind of a well-oiled machine. I wouldn't have been able to do it if we'd have just started out, or, you know, say I met someone, a partner, some sort of creative partner now in London, and we tried to work together. It would be difficult because we just don't, me and Jacob know each other so well. Like, I'll know if he's in a bad mood, and as soon as he says hello, I'll know. I was like straight away read the energy, and like vice versa. And so we just, and we also we kind of, we know each other, our expectations of each other, and so you know if you've done enough work or you've worked hard enough. It's like, it's that thing we were saying earlier about like either being hard on yourself or not. The good thing about having a partner is that it's not necessarily, you don't need to feel guilty about whether you've worked hard enough or not. It's kind of more like, have I done enough to be a team player, and like, have I let that person down? Have I done enough work that he is waking up in the morning, having, you know, I've added 10 more pages to this treatment or this script or this storyboard where I've put him in a good place for the next day.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing. It's like, it's not just a case of like, am I pulling my weight? you're setting someone up for the day. If I wake up and I see that he hasn't like really done that much for whatever reason, maybe he's busy, maybe he's just being a lazy cunt, it will put me in a bad mood instantly.
Yeah.
If it's not enough, and I'm like, oh man, I've been for like a
your
hard day's
boots,
work.
you got a lot to
and
fill.
it's the same with him. If he wakes up and
you're gonna do that the other way around.
Yeah, it's weird.
How long has it taken you to get to this point? Since beginning your career?
I think that I don't know. I'm only at the point where I feel like I can even call myself a director, and only the last like few years, I'd say.
Is that
and before
since
that
you started?
Yeah, but I didn't really. We just kind of, the way we started was just blagging it completely from the start. So I was doing photography, and I was on a bunch of fashion shoots, and they handed me a camera and they said that we want you to do behind the scenes video. I was in Mexico, and so I was like running around this beach doing like, and because I knew how to, it was before like the Canon camera, the EOS Canon cameras, anyone knew they could really do video, how good they were. And then I didn't know what to do with the footage, so I was like, I'd met Jacob at the pub, and I was like, do you know how to edit? And he'd been to film school, because I hadn't been to film school. And he was like, yeah, I did edit. He kind of did it in his bedroom. And from there, we just kind of went, all right, should we start our own company, and should we do our own thing? And that was cool, but it's like, I wonder whether, had it been more of a traditional filmmaker's route, where you're an assistant, or you're a film loader, or you're a camera assistant, and any of these jobs where you kind of just like, you're on a film set every day and you're kind of learning as you're going, and you're learning through watching. I learned through just like making every mistake under the sun, and so I don't know how efficient that was.
I think it's funny because I was pondering your first question as we started. It's funny you said that, because I think top of my list.
Hang on, he's got the answer now. There we go. How long did that? Was that 45 minutes?
Top of my list was going to be the power of blagging.
The power of blagging. I can't believe that's top. It's not like a good moral compass.
Oh, the nice one. The other one.
Good moral compass.
And then there's positivity
strong,
and ambition to achieve shit.
Yeah. So but blagging is like, it's just good up until a point. I don't know. There's a difference between like being a complete bullshitter and a blagger, I think.
Yeah. And being just start though. You always have to. There's always that. Yeah. It's not using it as your.
But you do need
like
to
for
push
everything,
yourself.
but there's always that initial stage of you're not quite. You just have to just give it a go. You're never gonna feel ready to start. Is what I mean.
I very much feel that about scripts and kind of screenplays, and that's not something I've ever studied or been really involved in. And that's how I feel right now, is that I'm like, I'd actually really feel that I would like to write a script or scripts and a screenplay, and the only thing holding me back from doing that is a lack of confidence, because I don't feel like I don't feel
imposter
like
syndrome.
It's like I'm not a writer, so why should you do that? And what I'm trying to convince myself is, the amount of shit that's out there, the amount of shit scripts. It's like, I can do better at least than those really shit ones. And also, it's just like, you're making excuses for not just getting down and doing it, because the doing it is the hard bit. You just get your head down and you just have to write. Yeah. And the reason the excuse is not that I'm not a writer, because I've blagged plenty of other stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not a writer, it's just that I don't have the confidence that it won't be shit.
Yeah. And that's where, I think I've found that as well. You don't have to have confidence if you have courage.
Ooh.
I like that.
Courage becomes confidence. If you start, you don't know what to do, and it frightens you, but it frightens you, but you do it anyway. That's the courage. But then if you keep doing that enough, eventually you will have done it enough, and then you've built that confidence. So I think they're both effective.
I really like that, and I do feel that on sets on a commercial set, it's a very different setup to the documentary, where you have a studio, maybe it'll be on location, but you'll have a bunch of like people in your crew you have to order around, and you are essentially just leading that set and dictate exactly what happens on that set. And the first few times I did that, I had no idea what I was doing, absolutely no clue. And again, because I hadn't been through that kind of traditional setup, I hadn't been on a lot of film sets, and so I didn't even know, I couldn't even like just copy what other people said. So there were people coming up to me asking me all these technical questions, words that I didn't even know what the words were. It's mostly like technical, lighting words, because I started DOPing and then we were directing, and I just remember thinking to myself, I was just like, just look confident and look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you're pretending. Like, I would take a gaffer aside, for instance, who does, essentially puts up all the lights, and say, look, I don't actually know a lot of the technical terminology. Like, sorry about that. Help me out here. But like, I know what I want. Yeah. So I know what kind of look I'm going for. So just kind of, read between the lines for me, help me out a little bit. It's not about completely like, because people know if you don't know what you're doing. Like they know. It's not that they, like, it's not that you have to pretend that you know what you're doing, because like everyone will sniff that out. But what you need to know, what you need to exude, is confidence that you know what you want, right? So if you don't know the technical term of a particular light, you're like, look, I want this scene to feel soft and hazy, and I want it because this is the emotion of the shot. And like, that's how you communicate it with someone on set, is that you kind of you say, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want. The most important thing is just making sure that people understand that you have a strong vision and you know what you want. And this as soon as you start like being influenced by every little thing that happens, and then you look like you're losing confidence, it's like everyone's, it's like a ripple effect. No one knows what they're doing. It descends into chaos in such a quick, like so quickly. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. And film sets are like super stressful places, really busy, always don't have enough time to do whatever.
Enjoying this.
Shut up.
It's always a high stress environment, but it's amazing if you just keep your cool and just pretend, like, look like you know what you're doing, how everyone just stays calm.
Keeps
and everyone
grounded.
Just does it. Everyone just gets on with it. And I've a couple of times I've got so tired, or I've literally just like, the whole thing's going to shit, and I'll kind of just lose my cool a little bit, and I've genuinely looked back on that shoot and gone, that's when I lost it. That's when I lost everyone.
Feel the vibe.
That's completely when I lost everyone, and like, so now my rule is just whatever happens, don't lose that
game face. 100%.
It's so important. It's so important. So, but where that lies in blagging or bullshit,
but then it takes a sort of confidence, because there's a sort of confidence in accepting you don't know something, isn't
yes,
it? Like, you're going, this, like you say, this is what I want. I've come to you because you're good at it. What do you think we should do? And then people like that you've acknowledged that they're good at it.
Completely. And what you also do is you put your trust in them, and people, I don't know, people respond to that sort of kind of one-on-one vulnerability as well. Like, if you can say to someone, look, I trust you not to, give me shit for this or be a dick, but help me out here, one-to-one. I don't know what I want. Even if you're just like I don't actually, like, sometimes I'll say to DOP, a cinematographer, I'll be like, I don't actually have a clear vision for this particular shot, what I want. I know it needs to feel like this. or I need to this, but can you give me a frame, like suggest something,
and then
like
you've
you
brought
put
them
that,
into it, haven't
brought
you?
that into,
and they're sort of engaged with it, haven't they?
Yeah, and that's literally, I mean, that is all. That's all that directing is, really. It honestly, that's all it is.
Just kind of bouncing off that a little bit. Do you ever feel intimidated when you see, like, especially at the beginning when you're from working from the ground up, seeing other people that are way more advanced than you or local competition? Did you ever feel intimidated that may affect your work at all, or kind of your motivation?
Yeah, I mean, like people on set are like, clearly have been working on film sets for like 10, 20 years, and they're the ones that, like, if they don't get on board, if you can't get them on board in that way that I'm talking about, then it's constant insecurity.
So is that people was that people you're working with that have got more experience?
In both senses, just for maybe some more clarification, also running a production company, I face other people, especially in London, that, produce this amazing work, and sometimes you do get a bit like, I wish I was involved in a project like that, so I can kind of flex my creative fingers and produce something like that. And that does sometimes demotivate you, especially at more crucial times.
Well, no, I mostly it's just seeing other directors' work and just being like, shit, that's so good. That's so good. Yeah. Like, yeah, I mean,
then you can choose to be motivated rather than intimidated.
Yeah.
Well, the way that you deal with it specifically with that is just creating work that you feel good about and feel passionate about, and if it's not something that you're getting professionally, if you're just never going to get great work handed to you on a plate. The only way you're ever going to get work is if you've done something that's awesome, and then you'll get hired for that exact same thing. People that don't, clients, or no one has any actual kind of no one has any imagination. They have to choose you as a filmmaker. They base it on your previous work.
Yeah.
And so if you want to make that work, and if you see someone that's ahead of you that has done that amazing work, just be like, all right, what is the best thing that I can possibly make, so I can get hired to make that sort of work.
Because you had that with an agency when you first went to LA, didn't you? That it was commercial work. You had all this sort of lovely footage of sort of documentary shorts and things you'd done, but they didn't have anything specifically of the documentary style. I mean, of the commercial type advertising work that they were doing. Yeah. But you would have been more than capable of producing the quality they're after. Yeah. But you didn't have anything exactly what they normally use.
It is. I mean, the commercial world is mental. I mean, it's insane, and that's the thing. I don't know. Like, I'm not quite sure how I feel about it in terms of the commercial world, because I find it a really interesting challenge, and I love working with like agencies, and I love like this whole thing of working in a big team, and it's all a load of problem solving, but your stuff gets watered down so much. Like, and you're just like, what? Yeah, and also just that it's like there's a thing about, I don't know, whatever it is, tables, and they're like, oh, you don't have any work to do with tables in your
you obviously, you're not. Yeah,
it's some good work in here, and what you're asking for is just like a shot of a table, and this is it. Use your imagination, maybe, but it's really frustrating. So the only way of but there's no point pissing and moaning about it. Is the way it is. So if you want that kind of work, then the only way to get it is to make that work and make it off your own back, and like, it seems like that's something that you're doing a lot. Is that you're kind of self-initiating a lot of work, and it's all about what you want to make. Just make what you want to make.
So, change subject slightly. You're a man who's travelled a lot. If you had to pick one favourite, what would be your favourite poo story? Well, we like a good poo story here on Faffin About.
Is it?
As of late. And just around the table yesterday, you were telling a couple of crackers. It'd just be, interesting just to bring it back down to earth. you've been in a lot of places with, questionable sanitation. I know you've had some crackers. I mean, I can let you brainstorm for a little while.
You're right.
I mean, it's hard to pick one, isn't it?
It's hard to pick one.
Maybe
I've
a
had
top three.
A good catalogue of stories, I'd imagine.
I've had so many poos. That's the thing.
We all have, Greg.
I've had so many poos. It's like, what was the best one? I don't know. That was actually, that's
beat
a better
yourself up.
question.
We've all had
What's
a
the
lot
best
of
poo
poos.
you've had?
Yeah, okay. Well, it's best poo story though.
No, I know.
I didn't want you to describe the consistency.
No, I'm just thinking though. Would you be able to recall
Gillian
your
McKeith
best
over
poo?
here.
That's a good question.
Your poo was so good that you remembered it for years.
Yeah,
Oh, I remember
I think
98.
That's a good question.
January 98, I think it was.
Yeah.
Slipped out to perfection.
Yeah. Well, I've been trying a new high fibre diet. It was going very well. Do you think you could name your best poo?
But
I know personally, probably more situations where it's been like, oh shit, like this is not a good space to be.
you
Right
always
now.
remember
Yeah.
the bad stuff, don't you? That's the trouble.
but I
Never
think
remember
that's
the good
human
ones.
nature, isn't it? We're
Human
wired
nature.
to pick up on negatives because that's
Yeah.
we're wired to spot danger.
But yeah, I think the standard. Probably the worst one was when I was cycling through Mexico. And,
So hang on, paint the picture. It was 10 years ago.
well, I wasn't going to go straight into the shit. I mean, would you give me a fucking chance?
Storyteller.
Yeah. My next line was, and then I had a really bad poo. Yeah. Can you just give me
in
some,
Mexico?
Can you give me some space here?
So I'll let you story tell.
So cycling through Mexico, oh shit. No, I'm joking. No, right. So
It was a warm summer day.
I was cycling through Mexico with my friend Mark. We decided to cycle from Canada to Costa Rica. Long way,
Beast.
I know. 4,500 miles, since you're asking. And we were horrifically ill along Baja, California. It's basically like a desert kind of peninsula, and we had not followed any of the rules because we were bloody renegades. We'd had drunk the water. We'd like eaten roadside tacos.
I've had that.
And that had flies on them and shit. And we were both very severely dehydrated in this baking hot sun, and we were deteriorating more and more every single day we were cycling. So we were cycling, and then pitching up a tent, would camp, in someone's garden or something. And it got to the point where, I was, every 10 minutes we were getting off our bikes and, just shitting by the side of the road. And there was one point where I kind of had there was this mound of dirt by the side of the road, and I had to climb over this mound of dirt, and was shin deep in it as I'm diving up. So I'm just going up in it, and I'm just thinking, oh, it's this horrible feeling in my shoes. I just remember thinking, I'm gonna shit myself, but this is also an annoying feeling that adds to the negativity. Anyway, I would do that, do my business, come over, and I just remember seeing Mark on the other side of the road, lying down, I mean, you can't tell whether he's dead or alive. And that next to him is a roadkill dog. And I just remember thinking, there is not much to choose from between this roadkill dog and Mark right now. They're interchangeable. He was in a bad way. So we got to this village, and we were like, okay, fine, we've got to ask someone if we can stay in their garden and pitch up a tent for the night. We can't go on. We've lost all our strength. We were just shitting outside every 10 minutes, and so Mark in broken English managed to convince a man with a white cowboy hat in this tiny little dusty village to take us in. So he kind of took us in and introduced us to his young family and his wife and his little kids. And his little boy got really excited that we were there. He's like a 10-year-old boy. Immediately started kicking the ball around in the garden. And obviously we want to be gracious guests, so I go out and start playing football with him. But I'm shuffling around like some sort of strange, shitty zombie, and trying to kind of eyes half closed, trying to I'm so weak at this point. And then Mark is then sitting inside, and this guy's got his family photo album out from some distant uncle in London that he's had in 1909 or something, And he's showing him all these pictures, and Mark's like, yes, yeah, muy bien, yes, very good. And so we're like, oh God, kill me. And then at night they kind of have us around for dinner, and we're all around the dinner table, and we're having obviously really spicy home cooked meal, which didn't help at all. Mark actually reminded me last night there was parts of the story that I'd forgotten, which was I at one point was just like, El baño?
What's el baño?
Just the bathroom, please. So there's this shitty little door that's like tiny little place. This family home, and we're all kind of sitting around the table, but the door is like from me to you,
so it's like
to
a saloon door.
Where they're sitting is like a saloon door, just like kind of swinging,
damn.
and I'm like, I have to go. I can't hold it in any longer, and thought, there's that moment where you sit there and you're like, okay, can I make this quiet? And it becomes very apparent that you can't. And just the looks on their face when I walked out have just kind of
horror.
Well, it wasn't even horror. They were so polite, and that's what made it worse.
That was the horror.
The fact that they were so polite and nice and smiley.
They were just quietly,
just like
listening to you unleash hell.
And they were like, and we got to the end of the meal, and we were kind of like, oh, we better hit the hay. So we went out. We started like setting up our tent in their dusty, concretey garden, and we started setting it up just like slowly. And then he was like, no, you can't sleep in the garden. Like, you have to sleep in our house. You have our bed. And so we had there, put us in him and his wife's room. Him and his wife and the two kids slept in the kids' room, which is a tiny little room. Don't even know how they all fit in there. And then ensued a night of tossing and turning, sweating. Me and Mark just had the worst fever imaginable. Back and forth to the toilet. Didn't get a wink of sleep. And at one point, I sat up and just heaved all this vomit all over their marital bed.
Oh no!
Covered the bed from head to toe. Mark's still next to me, and it was a nightmare. And just had to lay there in my own vomit.
Damn.
And we got up the next day and just kind of had the sheets and sheepishly kind of said, sorry, we kind of did this to your sheets, sorry about that. And they're all dressed up, all nice for church. And
it's the last time they ever took any Englishmen again.
They're all dressed up like, just all suited and booted for church, all in their best Sunday best. And we had to give them their sicky sheets and say sorry, and they were like, don't worry, and they're just the nicest people. Oh my God. And they went off to he was like, I'll give you a lift to the chemist. He was like, I've got some drugs for you. I would get you some drugs. And we're like, anything, just give us some drugs. Turned out to be paracetamol, which is way beyond. We were way beyond that at that point, and it went from bad to worse really. And that day we just had to carry on cycling down a completely deserted straight road.
Some scary stuff.
Ended up passing out under a tree, and I was done. I was actually done. I actually was in a really bad way. And Mark had the wherewithal to was hitchhiking any car that came along. We met eventually a pickup truck, took us with our bikes and took us on to the next hotel. We stayed in this like little motel for about 4 days, just recovering. I actually think we had something bad. I think we had some sort of really bad illness. And I actually, looking back on it, realised like how serious it was.
Yeah, you could have died from heat stroke very easily.
I think
I've watched a documentary and someone
it possibly was
die of heat stroke.
Yeah, and it possibly was just severe heat stroke.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't even like, the thing you imagine is it's that's the water, it's like food poisoning or something like that. I didn't have a hat on. And the sun, the Mexican sun in August, I think it was.
That's when I was there.
The sun was beating down on me.
Yeah.
And the water was just like, it was so warm that you couldn't drink it. Like it was like boiling water. It was just dribbling down your chin. That's the thing, man. Because heat stroke just actually makes you sick, like genuinely sick.
Yeah. Well, I've watched a documentary of someone who was walking I think it was that Himalaya. I don't know. He was walking around the world anyway, and he went and met someone. I can't remember what country they were in, Africa somewhere. And then he was just hiking with his mate who's done a lot of travelling. And the next day of the film, he was like, "Oh, Barry died last night. He just died of heat stroke." And it was like,
nonchalantly there.
Shouldn't
what? He just seemed fine, and then he overheated.
Barry
a bit.
seemed fine.
I'm glad you're alive.
I was like, yeah,
So that works.
that's handy.
Yeah, no. So that's the main shit. So I've got loads of shit stories, but we'll do. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll just
Yeah.
make
Well,
it
I think
episodic.
how are we doing for time?
Well,
I think
on
it
that
might be a good
pooey,
place to
vomity
end.
note,
Wait, so that's the end
Yeah.
story of the episode.
This
It's
is
like that
that's-
is my thing.
That's how we roll here on
Wow.
Faffing
Yeah.
About.
Can you not make that a clip? Like that's just going to be the. You're going to put this out and then just do it like a 10-minute episode. Would be like
all
be
of
like,
that preamble was
this
just
week's episode of Faffing About was mostly complete and utter bollocks.
director's cut.
But here's the director's cut.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, you got to cut down, haven't you? Cut down
That's it,
until
the
you
best
real
bits.
get the real gems out.
yeah.
I don't think that was the. Yeah, you paraphrased me slightly there. I don't think that was what I was thinking
Yeah.
when I was saying that.
Yeah, I think you were.
Greg, thank you so much. It's been
Thank you
such
very
a pleasure.
much for having me in this field.
Yeah.
Not having me, like having me. Like that was earlier. He had me in the field.
Yeah,
He had me in the farmer's field.
yeah, that was magic.
Is it obvious? Is it apparent from the camera that we're in a field?
I think on the
Or have I
daylight,
given the game away?
I think
So we're not supposed
in
to
the
be
day,
in
Yeah,
in
it's
the day
supposed to be
you
a
can
studio.
see.
It's supposed to be a studio with no heating.
How do we get outside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Go on,
Awesome.
Signing out. Farewell.
Farewell.